Picture this. You wake up in the middle of the night, but there's no bedroom, no locked door, and definitely no flashlight. You're lying on the ground, surrounded by darkness. Then you hear something moving in the bushes. Whatever it is, it's faster than you, stronger than you, and much better at killing. Sounds terrifying, right? Well, for early humans, this wasn't a nightmare. It was just another night. So how did our nearly defenseless ancestors survive in a world filled with giant cats, bone-crushing hyenas, and enormous crocodiles? Honestly, the answer is pretty incredible. Let's be honest, early humans didn't look like great survivors. They had no sharp claws, no protective fur, and no powerful bite. They couldn't outrun a big cat, and fighting a hyena face-to-face would have been a terrible idea. In fact, for millions of years, our ancestors weren't always the hunters. Sometimes, they were dinner. Scientists have even discovered ancient human bones with bite marks from large predators. So here's the big question. If humans were so vulnerable, why didn't these predators wipe them out? Let's start with one of the most dangerous hunters of all, the leopard. Leopards are masters of surprise. They hide in thick vegetation, move almost silently, and attack before their prey even realizes they're there. They're also strong enough to carry prey into trees. Scientists have found tooth marks on Homo habilis fossils that strongly suggest leopards really did hunt early humans. And that's what made them so frightening. You probably wouldn't hear one coming. So how do you defend yourself against something you can't even see? The first answer wasn't a spear or a club. It was paying attention. Early humans had to become incredibly good at reading their surroundings. A broken branch, fresh footprints, frightened monkeys, or birds suddenly becoming silent could all mean the same thing. A predator was nearby. Imagine having to notice every tiny sound just to stay alive. Those who recognized the warning signs had time to react. Those who didn't might disappear without anyone seeing what happened. But spotting the leopard was only half the problem. What happened when it finally attacked? Running in different directions would probably make things worse. Instead, the group could stay together, shout, wave branches, and throw stones. Now, this might not sound very impressive to us. But to a leopard, a crowd of screaming humans throwing rocks could look like serious trouble. Most predators don't want to get injured. A broken tooth or damaged leg could stop them from hunting and eventually kill them. So humans didn't always need to defeat the predator. They just needed to make it think, this meal isn't worth the risk. Pretty clever, right? But leopards weren't the only problem. Early humans also had to deal with hyenas. And forget the silly, cowardly hyenas you sometimes see in cartoons. Real hyenas are intelligent social hunters with jaws powerful enough to crush large bones. During the Pleistocene, humans even lived alongside larger extinct hyenas, including the heavily built Pachycercuta. But here's where things got complicated. Humans and hyenas often wanted exactly the same things. Both searched for meat, used caves, and gathered near water. Imagine your group finally finding enough food for everyone. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, you hear hyenas approaching. What would you do? Stay and protect the food, or run and go hungry? One person wouldn't stand much of a chance. But several humans working together, armed with stones and wooden clubs, were much harder to scare away. Food wasn't just a meal anymore. It became a test of teamwork. Caves created another problem. Sure, they protected humans from rain, wind, and cold. But walking into a dark cave without checking it first? That could be a very short adventure. The cave might already belong to hyenas, lions, or even bears. Archaeologists have discovered caves used by both humans and large carnivores, sometimes during different periods. So our ancestors couldn't simply walk inside, lie down, and relax. First, they had to answer a dangerous question. Is something already living in here? Humans could use shouting, stones, smoke, and their numbers to make the cave uncomfortable for its owner. But let's be clear, chasing a lion or hyena out of a cave would have been extremely dangerous. Sometimes, the smartest choice was simply to leave. Survival didn't always belong to the bravest person. Sometimes, it belonged to the person who knew when not to fight. Then humans gained something that completely changed life after sunset. Fire. Humans were using fire hundreds of thousands of years ago, and evidence from Wonderwork Cave suggests controlled fire may go back around 1 million years. Fire provided warmth, light, and a way to cook food. But it also made nighttime camps less attractive to many predators. Think about how important that was. For the first time, the darkness didn't completely belong to the hunters. But could humans simply light a fire and sleep peacefully? Not quite. Fire wasn't an invisible force field. A hungry or curious predator might still approach the camp. The flames also needed fuel. If nobody added more wood, the fire could slowly die during the night. And suddenly, the group would be sitting in darkness again. That meant humans probably needed to sleep close together and share responsibilities. If one person noticed danger, they could wake everyone else. So yes, fire was powerful. But the people gathered around it were the real defense. And even fire couldn't protect humans everywhere. Especially near the water. Early humans needed rivers and lakes for drinking, finding food, and moving through the landscape. Unfortunately, crocodiles needed those places too. Crocodiles are ambush predators. They can remain almost invisible in shallow water, waiting patiently before launching a sudden, explosive attack. Fossils from Olduvai Gorge contain evidence consistent with crocodile attacks on early humans. A large extinct horned crocodile also lived in that region. So imagine being thirsty while knowing something could be watching you from beneath the water. How would you safely take a drink? The safest method was probably to approach carefully and stay in a group. While one person collected water, the others could watch the surface. They would look for suspicious ripples, movement in the mud, or a shape that looked a little too much like a floating log. Over time, the group could remember which parts of the river were especially dangerous. That knowledge could save lives. But crocodiles mostly controlled the water. What happened when humans moved into open grasslands? That's where the giant cats were waiting. Early humans lived alongside lions, leopards, and several extinct saber-toothed cats. One of them was Meganterian. It had long, flattened canine teeth and was probably an ambush hunter rather than a long-distance runner. These cats were powerful enough to bring down large animals, so an isolated human would have looked like a much easier target. This created one very important survival rule: never be the easiest thing to attack. But how could humans avoid becoming that target? Children and injured group members could remain closer to the center of the group. Adults could carry stones, wooden clubs, or sharpened sticks while traveling. They could also avoid thick vegetation where predators might hide. Even choosing the right place to sleep made a difference. Camping directly beside a busy water source was dangerous because predators visited those locations after dark. Our ancestors had to think carefully about every decision: where to walk, where to drink, and even where to sleep. Then simple sticks became something far more dangerous: spears. By roughly 400,000 years ago, humans were making carefully shaped wooden spears. The famous Schöningen spears discovered in Germany weren't just random branches picked up from the ground. They were properly designed hunting weapons. A spear gave humans something incredibly valuable: distance. Instead of getting close to teeth and claws, a person could attack from beyond the predator's immediate reach. But one person with one spear could still miss. So what happens when the whole group carries them? Suddenly, the predator isn't facing one frightened primate. It's facing a wall of sharp wooden points, flying stones, loud voices, and possibly fire. Attacking humans was becoming much more dangerous. There's even archaeological evidence that Neanderthals hunted and butchered cave lions. Think about that for a moment. The creatures that had once hunted our ancestors were now being hunted by humans. But weapons weren't humanity's greatest advantage. That advantage was something even more powerful: information. Humans could learn from dangerous experiences and share that knowledge. They could remember a crocodile-filled riverbank. They could warn others about a leopard hiding near a certain tree. They could teach children which tracks, sounds, and smells meant danger. This changed everything. One person's mistake could become a lesson for the entire group. And as human communication improved, important survival knowledge could pass from one generation to the next. But there's one final reason our ancestors survived. And it may be the most important of all. Humans survived because they turned individual weakness into collective strength. One human alone was vulnerable. But 20 humans sharing warnings, protecting their children, carrying weapons, and gathering around a fire? That was something completely different. Our ancestors never became faster than lions. They never developed stronger jaws than hyenas. And they certainly didn't become more dangerous in water than crocodiles. Instead, they changed the rules. They watched, they learned, they remembered, and most importantly, they worked together. So the next time you feel safe behind a locked door, remember this: you're here because thousands of generations before you survived nights filled with predators. Not because they were the strongest creatures in the world, but because they refused to face that world alone. Now, be honest. If you were dropped into their world tonight, with no phone, no weapon, and no shelter, do you think you would survive until sunrise?